When I hear people accusing conservative Christians of wanting a Christian nation and this Christian nationalism thing, I just think, is Christian nationalism for me, but not for thee? Because if you think about it, we already have Christian nationalism in this country, but it's just a progressive one. So here, let me explain this. Because in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we had this social gospel movement, and a lot of well-meaning Christians, Christian socialists too, they thought that they could use a mechanism of the state to advance kingdom purposes. And through the late 1800s, decade by decade, what happened was pastors, they started sitting on commissions, they started advising presidents, and they started passing laws. I mean, think about the Prohibition, right? The temperance movement. All this was Christian values that were being put into law in a way like the Christian left who are accusing people right now of doing, but we're not. So what happened was over time, and because we were a much more Christian nation back then, and the government was much more open to legislating Christian morality, the progressive Christian values became ingrained into society. And over the last decade, 100 some years now, it's become just what we believe, what we all believe government should do, but never understanding that the current nation that we have and the laws that we have are based upon Christian values, but they're just more progressive Christian values. So if you don't think about it too hard, you don't realize that we actually have Christian nationalism in action today. And you have to admit, they did it out of Christian concern for society, but what happened was they took the means of doing so out of the hands of Christians. And that's what I think the Bible has always taught. Christian values in the hands of Christian people to help the widows, orphans, the foreigners, resident aliens. This is our responsibility, but they took it out of our hands and gave it to the state. And it's been so successful, this progressive Christian nationalism, that people don't even think about it. And because we've become so much more a post-Christian nation, that we've lost the understanding that a lot of our values that pass into law are based upon Christian values. They just think that, well, it's obviously the right thing to do. And for those who are more secular humanists or atheists, they say, well, it's obvious that we need to care for those who are less fortunate, but never understanding and realizing that these are actually Christian values. So now when the conservative Christians want to actually bring us back to a conservative Christian perspective on what Christian values are in society, we get labeled as theocratic, wanting to put women back in the kitchen, having back alley abortions. And our perspective and our interpretation of what Christian values are is twisted, and they think that we want to control people. And I think that today, if you look at Christian nationalism from a progressive perspective, we have social welfare, we have affirmative action, we have this criminal justice reform, and then we have, of course, this immigration policy where we welcome everybody. But human nature being what it is, and people losing sight of the basis for Christian morality and charity, it's been abused. Because if you think about the last 4 years, however many millions of people have come in, and you think about like the Somalis in Minnesota, I just read about, they've abused the medical system and they have built the nation for millions of dollars. And there's Medicare fraud, and a lot of these things that are meant to be used for good have been abused. And this is just the reality of human nature. And if you think about, even now, we have progressive Christians who slam conservatives for saying you hate these people of color, you hate foreigners, you're racist, you're bigot because you don't want to allow these immigrants, illegal immigrants, to actually come to the nation. You hate these people. But the truth is, how much more can we take? You look at the last 100 years of progressive Christian nationalism in action, and look at our nation today. We are suffering, and we are suffering because we are seeing the abuse of our system, and the people who are actually paying for this, and we might have actually paid for it because we thought we were actually doing good, and we're using the state to do good. But how much more can you milk the tax cattle, which is kind of what we are, when we're squeezed so dry that we can't take care of ourselves, but then we see people here who are not even Americans and we see those people who are abusing the system and they're living better than the rest of us. That's not a good reflection on this progressive Christian nationalism as it's being lived out, because so much of this compassion, charity, and concern for the poor has no counterbalance for responsibility and accountability. And if you want us to accept this kind of Christian nationalism, I can't buy that. And I think that for us as Christians in America, we need to be very balanced, because right now, if you think about it, conservative Christians, when we come into this Christian nationalism debate, it's like in a game of football. We're on the 2-yard line, and their progressive Christian nationalists have been advancing down the field for the last 100 years, and they're right at our doorstep. And all we're saying is, hey, you know what? We just want to level up, balance out the playing field and say, your interpretation is one way of looking at Christianity, but our interpretation is another way, and that's not wrong. And I think for where we are today, Christians from both sides, but let's say more from the right side, conservative side, we need to actually be firm, and we cannot cower. We have to stop apologizing for what we believe is the right way of actually applying Christian values in the nation. And they accuse us of theocracy, of wanting to actually have a pastor-in-chief, of becoming think about it. If we're true Christians, then we want the welfare and the best for our nation. And if we believe that the Bible and the Christian faith is true, and if we share that in our community, in our neighbors, in our region, our city, state, and our nation will become more Christian. And if that's wrong, then, I mean, how can that be wrong, right? So I will say, first of all, we need to stop apologizing for what we believe, and we need to also just turn the tables on the leftists and progressive Christians who accuse us of Christian nationalism, and we just say, you know what, we already have it, and look at it. Look at the results of it. How well are we doing based upon your interpretation of Christian nationalism? And we just believe that our way is a better way, because we believe that the responsibility for caring for the least and the last and lost is actually not up to the state, and it's up to us. So in terms of some practical things that we can do, I believe that, just very practically speaking, if there's bond measures or taxes that are being passed, we need to reject all of that, because any dollar that's taken out of our pocket just denies us the opportunity to use that for what we believe is right charity. I mean, a lot of Christians and Christian organizations already do good. Think about how much more good we can do if we had more time, because we don't have to work so hard for our money, and we have more money, the ones that we can actually keep, to do so much more good that God has commanded us to do, instead of giving that to the state. And I believe that as we move towards a more open Christian nation, and as Christians, I think we need to be firm, but also more patient and gracious and loving. and especially right now, people are hating us. And if they're going to hate you for this, then let them hate you. But we need to continue to pray for them, because it's just a matter of dialoguing so they can understand why we believe what we do, and that what we believe are these morals and values of helping people just live civilly in society is up to us as Christians in America, not as the government enforcing their Christian values through the progressive side or the conservative side. We just want to be able to actually live in peace and be able to advance our values and our beliefs. And as Jesus said, and I know that all of you who are Christians believe this, we are the salt of the earth and we are the light of the world. And practically, if we can actually have more means and resources to do that without government intervention, then I think we can slowly advance and make this country a better one. And from there, we can change the world for the betterment of society. So, just my take on what Christian nationalism is right now in reality. All right, so take care.